again, I'd like to thank you for coming along. My name's Keith Senior. I'm not going to be talking tonight, so you had enough of me last week. So tonight, the presentation is about stress and coping, but tonight we have got Lee, Jewitt and Paul Wood, and they will be introducing themselves and doing the presentation. So I will pass you on to Lee, who will start the presentation.
Cheers, Keith. Evening, everyone. So as Keith just said, I'm Lee Jewitt, and I'm recently retired from full-time rugby. I've just signed up Widnes, so I've gone semi-professional. But my passion away from the game is now I'm a counsellor and I'm a performance psychologist. I also have Paul Wood, who's going to tell you a little bit about himself in a minute and his journey. So I'll hand over to him now and let him speak a little bit on his journey, and then we'll throw it back to me. Paul?
Cheers, Lee. My name's Paul Wood, ex-Warrington forward. Played over 350 games for Warrington and finished my career off at Featherstone. Was fortunate enough to play a couple of international games. So in terms of my rugby career, it wasn't too bad. Spent 20 years in the game and finished off 3 years coaching at the Lee Centurions. Not involved anymore. I'm in the real world. I've got a proper job. So different stresses upon my life today as it was growing up. Just a bit about myself in terms of my emotional state, my stress and my coping mechanisms. If I'm honest with you, I've never been a person who's been able to handle stress very well, only up until probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And my coping mechanisms were completely wrong for myself. I made some bad decisions in terms of my coping strategies. Drink and prescription drugs was a big one for me. But basically, from a young age, I always felt a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress around me. Always felt like I had the world on my shoulders. And I think I put a lot of that down to I had to prove people wrong, because I was always sort of labelled as that kid who wouldn't really achieve nothing, because I was mischievous and I was sort of always in a bit of a dream world, really. I always had these fantasies that I wanted to do different things. So I sort of got this bee in my bonnet about I need to prove people wrong, and it created a lot of stress and anxiety around my social life. Now, some of the pressures that I put on myself in terms of what I wanted to achieve and what I needed and the targets that I needed to hit, some of the qualities were actually quite good, because they made me push. They pushed myself into a place where, I was going to get myself into a professional rugby playing environment because of the pressures I put on myself. But on reflection, I put too much stress on myself. Over the years, as I said, I started at a young age, really. I dealt with anxiety a lot from a young age, from the age of 12. And I was sort of, because it was such a young age and I never learned to deal with it, when I started getting into my 20s and my late 20s, it became a massive issue because I didn't know anything different. I developed OCD as a young kid. And when I talk about OCD, I don't mean cleaning and making sure everything's nice and neat and tidy in my house. I'm talking, chronic compulsions and obsessions where I had to complete different rituals. And there were days where, I could be late for things, and I could be, there were days when I basically didn't leave my house because of the anxiety, the paranoia, and the stress of doing it. But again, from an outside point of view, I had quite a decent rugby career, so a lot of this was hidden. I used rugby massively as a coping mechanism. When I was in a rugby environment, when I was training, when I was playing, that's the only time I ever felt like I was in control of my environment. And ultimately, I'm a bit of a, I suppose, looking back, I was a bit of a control freak, really. I didn't like being out of control. When I was in the rugby environment, everything was down to me. If I played well, if I trained well, if I lifted well in the gym, if I took my supplements, my recovery, my hydration, everything was down to me. So I felt like I was in complete control, and that was sort of my safety blanket, really. That environment was completely, you know, a safe place for me. So, you know, again, looking back, it was a coping mechanism. I didn't realise all this at the time. You know, and as I said, you know, my career were pretty good. It was long, and you know, but I just didn't handle the stresses. One of the major things that I've noticed that I did quite a lot was I catastrophised a lot of situations that I was in. You know, even from simple things like, you know, getting injured. I was speaking to a former player yesterday, actually, who was saying, you know, the physical side of rugby league is quite easy to get over. You know, you break a bone, or you dislocate your shoulder, or you have a knee operation, or you rupture a testicle, you can get over it. You know, it's pretty easy. But the thing that I struggled with was the emotional side, because I was always catastrophising where that injury would take me, you know, whether it would take me out of the place that I wanted to be. So I was always projecting. And again, I was doing that from a young age. I was always, you know, projecting forward and sort of envisioning things going wrong. But the only time I never did that was when it involved rugby. I could always picture myself as a kid being successful at rugby and playing professional rugby, but I couldn't do it in any other situation. So in terms of dealing with stress, I've had to literally completely rewire everything that I do. You know, today I've got some great coping mechanisms in terms of, I love meditation, I love mindfulness, because it brings me back to where I need to be. Again, it just takes me out my head. I'm not projecting. I'm not looking back at things that I've failed on, or things that have been successful as well. Because, you know, sometimes we can look back with fond memories, but then we can look back too often. You know, I can be guilty of looking back at my rugby career now I've retired and wanting it back. Well, it just ain't coming. You know, so I've really got to watch my thoughts and watch where I'm getting. You know, on the back of this, you know, I have had suicidal thoughts, and I have done some silly things in the past. A couple of close calls on the back of it as well. And again, this is all why I'm playing rugby. So from an outside point of view, nobody knows unless I tell them this. So you know, it's been in terms of mental health and mental fitness. It's been an absolute roller coaster for the last 20 years, really. Longer, about 25 years. So, you know, I'm happy to be here today and to say, you know, I've got through my journey with it, and hopefully that I can help you guys to have some coping mechanisms and dealing with stress, because ultimately, I'll finish on this, but ultimately, as I said, I was catastrophising a lot of situations, but I know today that nothing's really ever that bad, and we can overcome any situation that we're in. And I think, you know, gratitude is a big one for me today. You know, I've tried and focus on what I have got and not necessarily what I want or what I've had. You know, so if I keep that mindset, that's a big one for me, and it's it's gratitude. So thanks for that. That's my story, guys.
Cheers, Paul. Cheers. So again, we're gonna get on with the session now. We're gonna get into the session, and we'll come back to Paul's story throughout the session, I'm sure, and he'll give you guys some strategies like I will to take away. So today's overview: what is stress? Why do we need to monitor it? We're gonna have a look at the stress container, and then we're gonna have a bit of a recap and a little bit of a team talk. Next slide, please. So just the ground rules first, and as you can see here, it's what happens at offload stays at offload. So whatever we discuss here will stay here, unless, however, you know, we feel we have a duty of care, if you like, to report something to keep yourself safe or others safe. So that's first and foremost. We need to clarify that whatever we say though will stay here. Next slide, please. So what is stress? So we've got 4 great examples here of what stress is. The first one, stress is our body's response when it senses danger. And we all experience stress, and we do need it to function, which we'll speak about as we go with positive and negative stress. When stress interferes with our lives, it does become a problem. Too much stress for too long can make us ill, can get on top of us a little bit. If unaddressed, stress can cause mental health issues like depression, anxiety, or harm, or it can impact on our physical health as well. And 1 in 6 British workers will experience depression, anxiety, or stress-related issues. And just on the back of that, you know, we do need stress within our lives. And stress it's our body's reaction, you know, to feeling threatened or under pressure at times. And during this presentation, we'll have a look at how we can use it in a positive manner, as opposed to either backing away from it or using it negatively.
Just say on back of that as well, Lee. I've experienced some type of stress today, which, you know, we're talking about putting high expectations on myself and needing to achieve specific goals. I've just done a 2-day course, and I had a test at the end of it today. And, you know, I talk about feeling stressed out for those 2 days because I really wanted to pass it. But you know what? I can handle it because it's a natural, as you've just said there, it's a natural response. If I wasn't going to get stressed about that exam, it wouldn't be normal, would it? You know, it's our body's way of telling us that, you know, there's something coming up here that we're going to have to work hard for. You know, but I could deal with it. And, you know, something as trivial as that, you know, I look at kids doing the GCSE exams and, you know, other people who are trying to achieve things from uni or, you know, work courses. And, you know, there's a lot of stress from this. But, yeah, I just thought I'd share that with you today, that, I felt proper stressed out, but not, you know, I know that's normal.
Yeah, just backing up you there, Paul. As you know, being in a changing room environment, within that change room, everyone handles the pressure. You're doing the same job, you know, in an hour's time. Once you're in that changing room, you've got a game coming. You're all experiencing different pressure, different stresses, but you're all going doing the same job. And as you would have seen, you know, like others would have, is in the change room, you've got lads being sick, you've got lads asleep, you've got lads dancing, lads listening to music. It's just how everyone handles it differently. But yet, that doesn't mean they're less capable. It's just their coping mechanism, you know. And as Will stated, you know, one size doesn't fit all. It's how each individual can handle that and deal with it in their own manner. Next slide, please. So sources of stress, as we've already, as we've just said, you know, there's negative stress and there's positive stress. Even happy events within our lives can bring stress. The only time that stress becomes an issue is if it's on a daily occurrence and if it's interfering with our day, within our daily structure. So as you can see from the top, we've got life changes. So leaving home, getting married, having children, you know, that all brings stress. Positive stress, divorce, relationships breakdown. We have health scares, physical illness, accidents or bereavement, and legal issues, arrest or imprisonment. So there are life-changing events which can bring, you know, some positive stresses, some negative. Emotional, peer pressure, conflicting cultural values, beliefs, and coping with uncertainty. And for me, looking at them ones, you know, peer pressure stands out massive. And I'm sure Paul can speak about this as well, that with the environment, within a team environment, peer pressure was huge. You know, it was a case of, you know, you're buying into that culture, whatever that may be. And you do feel a sense of pressure if you want to go your own way, whether that's, you know, for a positive reason. It's that, why are you not like everyone else? And there is a pressure what builds. And one thing I've seen throughout, and when we speak about schools, is peer pressure is becoming bigger. You know, every year it seems to be down to, you know, we all can make our own choices, but ultimately we get influenced a little bit more on peer pressure. So it's having the coping skills, you know, to get around that and go your own way. Paul, do you want to touch on peer pressure or anything there?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose for peer pressure for myself, you know, it was the pressures of what, you know, as I said, you know, I was always sort of put down as a kid and I wouldn't really achieve that much. And, you know, so there was pressures from people, you know, the peer pressure that I had, what I felt like I had was that I needed to prove people wrong, you know, and I had to live up to some expectations that these people had in their head. Looking back, there wasn't really, they didn't expect me to do anything, they didn't expect me to achieve high or low, you know, everyone were getting on with their own lives, but I'd built this perception up in my own head that everybody else thought I'd achieved nothing. So, you know, I needed to prove these people wrong. And, you know, that, again, you know, carried that round for a lot of years. And look, some of it was beneficial for me, but looking back, the majority of it, you know, I felt like I could have probably achieved a lot more, you know, if I weren't as stressed.
Yeah, and peer pressure can also, you know, even though we spoke about being a negative there, can also make us thrive. You know, that bit of pressure, if we use it correctly, it can make us thrive, and it can push us to the next level at times. So then we move down to physical, late nights, lack of routine, poor diet and misuse of alcohol and drugs. To the right there, environmental, poor housing, social isolation, unemployment, adjusting to new environment and financial pressures. And at the bottom, we've got starting a new job, coping with an increased workload, poor relationships and redundancy or fear of it. Now, I just want to touch on from social isolation there straight down, it's probably the world we're living in right now, you know, with what's going on. And a lot of that is out of our control. But when I look at that, especially with the social isolation, you know, we have been at times taken away from what we like to do and the normality, or what we perceive as normal. So it's during this, we are going to speak about how we can look at, you know, being locked away, being isolated from others in a positive way and make the most of it. Now, Paul, do you want to add anything on the job front? Because I know you started various jobs, haven't you?
Yeah, just what you said there, Lee, touching on, you know, it's control the controllables. And, you know, how many times do we hear that in a rugby coach's room when we're watching a video, you know, generally about they're talking about a referee, aren't they? We can never control the referee's decision, control the controllables. You know, even if it's, you know, if it's raining outside and there's lads going, oh, I don't play today, control the controllables. It's everyone's got the same thing, and it's exactly the same off the field. You know, sometimes we're going to lose jobs, and the only thing we can control is ourselves and how we respond to that situation. You know, and sometimes we have to go against, you know, how we feel. We've got to find a little bit of motivation, but it's a big one that for me, control the controllables. You know, just focusing on myself and what do I need now. I don't feel quite good at the minute, or I feel a little bit uncomfortable with this situation. Right, what can I do to make this situation better?
Yeah, and just on the back of that as well is that controlling the controllables. You know, it's marginal gains. You know, it's baby steps, as we say. It's taking each step at a time and building our foundations to ultimately, you know, build to bigger and better things. Next slide, please. So we have just a quote here. Everything negative, pressure and challenges are all an opportunity for me to rise. Now, I use this quite a bit, this one, and it's challenges equal opportunities. And that's what I use, because what I'm a firm believer is each challenge, whether it's negative or positive, will bring an opportunity. You could flip it around and you could say, well, each opportunity brings a challenge, and it does. But if we can look at it in a positive way, and we can look at it in a way that's going to help us grow and deal with it in a positive way and challenge the way we're thinking, you know, there becomes a more or less a positive opportunity at the end of it, as opposed to negatives. Because realistically, we all face challenges within our life, you know, however big, however small, you know, on a daily basis, that's what we all face. So it's just about what opportunity can we create from the challenge. Next slide, please. So positive or negatives? We've got two fantastic little quotes here, and I'm going to let Paul come in a minute and speak about one of them. So the first one is, you can't control the wind, but you can adjust the sails. And the second one is, the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. And just on the back of that second quote, especially, you know, having the ability to choose one thought over another, we all have choices. You know, that's life. We all have, 9 times out of 10, we have 2 choices to make. Okay, but sometimes it's about having the ability to step back, you know, from that clouded vision, if you like, then jumping straight in, to step back, you know, clear that clouded vision, have a think, and then make the choice. Because what that does is that overrides your thought process. 9 times out of 10, you'll step back and you'll realise, you know, is this as serious a problem? You know, now I've stepped back and I can see clearer. Now I can make the more positive choice. Paul, you know anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's a simple bit of advice. You know, we can choose one thought over another. But I think, you know, if you're in a bit of an hole and you are suffering from it, you know, an extreme low mood, then it is easier. You know, it's easier said than done, and you can think, well, you know, I know that, but I just can't seem to shake it off. And, you know, I mentioned mindfulness before. You know, something as simple as just clearing my head, bringing myself back to what I'm doing exactly at this moment in time. You know, not thinking about 10 seconds, you know, a second in front of me, or thinking where I've just been. It's just a case of, right, what do I need to worry about at this moment, at this, you know, at this time? And if I can do that, you know, 99.9, 99.9, I don't have anything to worry about, and I never have, and that's the key thing for me. And that's why I was saying at the end of the talk, you know, earlier on, nothing's as ever as bad as we seem. You know, if we think about what we need to worry about now, you know, we haven't got much, have we? Or I certainly don't. So yeah, it's a simple bit of advice, choosing your thoughts over another, but, you know, it's key that, you know, this sort of, you know, I'll call it mindfulness, but bringing ourselves back to exactly what we're doing now is a key thing for me.
Yeah, I fully agree with you when you said it's a lot easier said than done, you know, and I've kind of living proof than that. You know, I used to just, I always chose, you know, whatever choice come to me first, that's the choice I chose, you know, whether it was positive or negative. And one thing I've learned is, you know, by stepping back and cleaving your vision, exactly what you said, you know, mindfulness, and it just gives you, whether it's a split second, you know, to make that split second decision, you know, and by stepping back, it does make it clearer to swing towards a positive choice or a positive thought. Next slide, please. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the stress container or the stress bucket, whichever one you want to use. I'm going to use the stress bucket. And what this represents, as you can see, it represents a bucket. And the bucket is, everyone's got one. Everyone's got a stress container. That's what everyone's got, okay? Now, depending on the vulnerability of each person, depends on the size of the bucket. So, for instance, if we put a bucket under a tap and we tap on, eventually that bucket's going to overflow. Okay, and it's similar to us, you know, as human beings. If we have no filter and we have a bucket, at times everything's coming into the bucket, you know, throughout our, whether it's work life, you know, whether it's home life, you know, there's always things going into our mind, into the stress bucket. Eventually it can overflow if we haven't got a coping strategy or we haven't got a filter. So the idea of the bucket is, if we can imagine just on the side, you know, we have a little tap and the tap's slowly dripping, or it's on full blast, if you like. So what happens is, stress, you know, throughout, like I said, throughout our day, throughout our life, comes into the bucket. It never overflows. We understand we can we can filter what we need to filter, and we can keep hold of what we need to keep hold of. But what that does, that stops us, as you can see, from snapping, from it overflowing, from, we've all heard the term flipping your lid, you know, from getting too much, from the pressures, the stresses getting too much, and we lose sight and we lose track and we explode. So by having a tap or a filter, you know, what we do is that bucket never ever overflows. Okay, and it becomes a positive cycle then. We are going to speak on how we can create, you know, different problem solving and different coping mechanisms throughout this to help, you know, have that tap flowing constantly, to help individuals stop it from overflowing. Next slide, please. So, positive coping strategies. Paul, do you want to run through some of these and I'll jump in? Because you do a few of these, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, myself personally, you know, not in any particular order, but, you know, going straight to the, you know, getting moving. You know, for me, some days it is just, you know, going to the gym, and it's not necessarily about the workout as well. Sometimes for me, it's just being around the lads and having a chat. And, you know, I've got a group of mates there who I train with in the gym. And I know the ones who I can have a bit of a laugh with, and I know the ones who I can, you know, I can have a serious conversation with. So, you know, there's getting a balance there. But yeah, certainly physical aspect of it. I don't know. I've always loved training since I was a kid. You know, from age of 5, I was training. You know, I've started doing karate, then boxing, then Thai boxing, and then rugby, and I've just trained all my life. So whether that's just conditioned into me or whether it's just part of me, I don't know. You know, setting time aside is absolutely massive. I've touched on mindfulness and meditation, but, you know, it's something that I try to do on a regular basis. The meditation thing for me has just been an absolute, you know, game changer. And some people will say to me, "Oh, I can't meditate," but it's how often do you practice? You know, it's like anything, you've got to practice these things. And, you know, for me, just having the meditation and just clearing my thoughts and, you know, having a look at the stuff, what's going on as well in the head is massive for me. Learning a new skill. I'm always trying to learn new things. As I said, I've just been on a course, and, you know, that's a good thing. It just takes me out of my own head when I'm doing something that, you know, if I'm going through a bit of stress or, you know, I'm struggling with something, you know, just taking my mind off it through learning a new skill is not a bad thing. And sharing how I feel, you know, that's massive now for me. You know, talking. What I find is what I've found with me over the years, I've found that I'll only ever ring people when I'm okay. I never ring people when I'm not. You know, that's the challenge is, you know, people say, "Oh, you just need to speak to someone." The last thing you want to do when you're feeling, you know, down or you're feeling really stressed is speak to someone. So it's sort of just practicing the opposite of how we feel. When we're in that dark place or we're in a stressful situation or anxiety's kicking in, that is when we need to practice the opposite, because our heads will tell us to go into isolation mode, and they'll sort of, you know, tell us not to speak and just try and deal with it on our own. No, that's the time to speak to friends. And then there's switching off from distractions there. You know, I try to have time without my phone, because my phone is, you know, I'll put my hand up. Me and my phone, and, you know, I could be on it all day sometimes if I allow myself to be. You know, I just put my phone down to the side, put it on airplane mode, and just leave it. So, you know, there's some good stuff on there. But for me, I think the main one for me is setting the time aside. You know, and that's meditation and my mindfulness and speaking to other people. I've got people who I feel confident and I trust that I can speak to, who, you know, will give me advice and who can relate to where I'm at.
Yeah, and I'm just jumping on what you've just said there about you're taking time offline, aren't you? Especially with your meditation, your mindfulness, you're taking yourself away from the real world for a little bit. You know, that's what you're doing. You're kind of focusing on yourself and that self-awareness. And that's something I do. I take time offline, I call it, and it's just me. It's just me and my thoughts, whether it's thinking about how my day's going, you know, what I can do next, can improve on, but it's just me. It's just me with my thoughts, and that really helps. And again, you know, as we say, not one size fits all. But as you can see down on learning a new skill, that might be something what we can develop over time and we can learn, because it took me 2 or 3 years, to be able to take myself away and take myself offline. And then just regards to the stress bucket, something what works for me, what keeps my bucket from overflowing at times, if you like, and it's a positive coping strategy, is each evening I write down, how my day's gone, a bit like a story. I write how my day's gone, and then I look at that and I look at what I can let go and what I probably need to keep hold of, and whether it's something to learn by, whether it's something I need to speak about. I keep hold of stuff, but then ultimately I let a lot of stuff go away. Just by writing it down and then visualizing it and having a look at it, I can understand what I can let go away. So what the tap can kind of flush away, and then the few things what I can keep and learn from, whether it's the next day, the day after, or the week after. Next slide, please. So now we have negative coping strategies, and these are ones what we feel, or a lot of the time we feel like they can change the way we think and the way we deal with stress, which ultimately does, but it's a short-term fix, as we'll explain now. And the top one is overdoing it. So your caffeine, your sugar, alcohol, they're all quick fix, but in the long run they can increase stress. From when you eventually come around or you wind down, the stresses are still there. You've just kind of masked it for however long. We've got overworking, whether that's checking your emails out of hours. And as we've already said, we all need time to step back and unwind. Chasing perfection, it can create unrealistic expectations. And that's one what I'd say as a rugby league player, I was always doing, and I was chasing perfection, but I was looking at others all the time. I was comparing myself to others rather than, being the best Lee Jewitt, as opposed to trying to be better than everyone else. And I kind of forgot about myself within that. So I was chasing perfection, but I felt more like at the same time I would compare myself and chasing others continuously. And at times, a lot of the time I was inconsistent. That inconsistency were creeping in because I wasn't focusing on me. I was focusing on everything else, and I was chasing something that realistically I was never going to achieve, because that person I was chasing was a completely different athlete to me. So as it says at the bottom, accept that mistakes will happen. Mistakes are part of life. Growing, and once we accept them, mistakes will happen. They're not be negatives anymore. They turn into positives. And on the right there, we've got bottling up your feelings. So just assuming they'll go away, but in the long run, by saying I'll do it later, or I'll put it to the back of my mind, eventually it'll catch us up. And the way I like to describe bottling your feelings up, if you lay down and you had someone standing on your chest, when someone stood there on you, you'll feel isolated. You feel like you can't breathe. You feel like you can't move. Now, as soon as that person or that weight jumps off you, you feel free. You feel like you can speak. You feel like you can breathe. And that's how I describe by opening up and not bottling up your feelings. It's the same impact. You kind of, when Paul was saying earlier, having the weight on your shoulders, if it releases 1%, that's fantastic. It's just about opening up and not keeping everything to yourself and feeling isolated. And at the bottom there, we've got spending too much time in front of a screen, which we've just alluded to. It's taking yourself away, taking yourself offline, and doing something what can make you feel good about yourself as well at times. Whatever that may be. It's that the saying of, self-care. Self-care isn't selfish, and it's not. It's focusing on yourself and giving yourself every chance of happiness, and giving yourself every chance of replacing them negatives with positives. Paul, do you want to add anything on this?
Yeah,
have you?
We spoke about the bucket, about emptying the bucket and filling the bucket, and obviously, for me, this negative coping strategies, this is how you will get your bucket to overflow. Bottling things up. It's and expecting them to go away. Everything basically on this slide is the opposite of what we've just been talking about on the other one. So, drink. You know, I've spoke about it early on in the story. You know, chasing perfection. You know, always expecting things to be perfect. Just you know, so unrealistic to do that. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? You know, in a perfect world, but unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. But yeah, I just think, you know, those things on there. You know, the alcohol thing. I've done that. You know, I've tried to you know, find the answer in the bottom of a bottle, and it's never going to work. You know, the phone can still be a distraction for me, and bottling the feelings up. You know, I can still do it, but I need to, you know, I've got to really push myself to speak to other people and share my problems with them. But I've got a network of people who I'll share specific troubles with or problems with, and I feel comfortable with those people. So that's been a real winner for me.
Cheers, Paul. Next slide, please. Right, guys, so this is just a video on the stress container.
What is stress? It's the physical and the mental changes we experience as a result of the demands placed on us in day-to-day life. So what does a bucket have to do with stress? The stress bucket represents our capacity to cope with stress, and the water level is the stress load. The more demands or stresses there are in our life, the higher the water level, and we feel stressed. Let's look at the different types of stress. There are the stressors that we choose, such as moving house, starting a new job, or going on holiday. And while mostly a source of joy and comfort, family, friends, and relationships can also place us under stress. Work stress is a common problem and can include workload, flexibility, and personal relationships in the workplace. And we all understand the financial demands of having a mortgage, bills to pay, and family to support. We can also get stressed from our environment, including what we see in the media, our neighbours, and even the weather. Plus, sometimes we hold attitudes and make lifestyle choices that add to our stress. And when the demands or stressors become too much, the bucket overflows and we can't cope. There are, however, ways to make sure your stress bucket doesn't overflow. You can reduce the amount of stress in your bucket by making choices, problem solving, or asking for support. And you can grow the size of your bucket by building your resilience and skills level in coping with stress. Remember, your thoughts, body, and feelings are all connected. So if you go for a walk or visit a friend, even when you don't really feel like it, you may end up feeling better able to manage. But be aware, some short-term fixes to stress really make it much harder in the long run. We all carry our own size of stress bucket. Some buckets are larger than others. But what matters is that you can carry your own bucket comfortably without spilling a drop.
And what the video represents there is, you know, it's everyone's capacity is different. You know, it's just having the right coping mechanisms, you know, to deal with the size of your bucket. You know, exactly what me and Paul just spoke about in the video is just gone through. So my stress container now, Paul's going to take this because he's got some fantastic ones what he's used, you know, in the past to help him. So Paul.
Yeah, I've already touched on a lot of it, but yeah, my stress containers, you know, physical sometimes, you know, it's a gym session with my friends, you know, just making sure that I can interact with them. Sometimes I just need to burn off that energy. You know, sometimes I suffer with anger when I get frustrated through the day. So some days I just go to the gym and I just pound away at the weights and. You know, but mindfulness, the meditation is a big one for me. How do I know when my container's getting full? As I said, you know, sometimes my emotions get the better of me, and you know, I can show anger and I get irritated quite easy. I don't feel like eating, so when my appetite's gone, and that's very rare, but you know, I know that. If I sort of lose my appetite, that, you know, there's anxiety and there's stress around that. Just you know, not getting on with family members. People around me are really good now at noticing when they can see a change in me. So all these characteristics that I have, you know, this is where I go back to the meditation or the gym, or, you know, just getting out walking. You know, and what are your good and bad coping mechanisms, which I've touched on the good, but the bad ones in the past. No, I don't drink. I'm totally abstinent from alcohol. Don't take any prescription drugs, you know, because they're bad coping mechanisms for me. You know, I know people, some of my friends, they go home and they have a couple of bottles of a beer or a couple of glasses of wine when they finish work, and that's fine for them, absolutely fine, and it doesn't bother them, and it helps them. But I know for me that I can't do that. You know, for me, my coping mechanisms have got to be a little bit different, because it doesn't, for me, it doesn't solve the issue. It doesn't solve the issue. I don't get rid of anything, and it goes back to bottling things up. So, you know, I try and stay away from anything that's going to change my state of mind by putting something in my body, or it even could be something physical, like going out buying something new to make myself feel better. Try and stay away from those things now, and just try and make myself feel better within, which sounds a little bit hippie-ish or spiritual, but that's just for me, you know, and I've found that that's worked for me over the years after trying, you know, speak to numerous psychologists and counsellors. You know, that's my advice on staying, you know, in the moment, or staying mindful and trying to deal with our emotions. That's how I do it. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, mate. Yeah, cheers, Paul. And how do you know when your container is full? You know, mine's a really simple one, and I only recognised mine not long ago. I can't sit still. So when I feel, you know, when I feel under stress, I can't sit down and relax. I've got to be busy. I've got to keep busy. I'm kind of masking it. That's what I do, and that's how I know when actually it's time to offload, or time to take a step back. And with my good and bad coping mechanisms, you know, my bad is it goes hand in hand with it, because whilst I'm busy, you know, I'm consciously thinking about, you know, the things what haven't gone right. So it's playing on my mind. So then what I do is, the good ones is I either read, or exactly what Paul said, I take myself offline. You know, I sit down, I give myself that mindfulness, and I think about, well, how can I problem solve? How can I turn these bad coping mechanisms and these thoughts at the moment, what are playing on my mind, how can I turn and turn them into positives? But when Paul was saying, you know, about it being spiritual, and as we stated, you know, not one size fits all. You know, you might do some stuff and say, actually, that don't work. Well, that's fine, because we'll never know if we don't try it. You know, it's about trying what fits for you as an individual. Next slide, please. So we have team talk and recap. So everyone has stress. It is how we cope with it. It is how we cope, which determines whether stress has a negative or positive impact on our lives. Vulnerability can determine the size of your stress container. Having many positive coping strategies can help us regulate our stress container. And it's important to know how to identify when our stress container is full or overflowing. As Paul has said, and some great advice there, you know, he recognises now, you know, and so do I, you know, when it's starting to overflow, which for me isn't often. I do manage to keep my tap on and keep it flowing, but I wish I would have had this tap on, you know, 10 years ago. It would have made playing, especially, you know, a little bit easier for me. So, Paul, do you want to add anything on the recap, the team talk?
No, just what you were saying there as well about, you know, when you are feeling a bit off kilter, and if someone recognises it in you as well, you know, don't take the hump with that person. You know, don't take it personal. I've over the years, I've sort of been that person who's sort of saying, "What's up with you? There's something up with you," and they can tell. And I've always bit their head off, and I've always tried to deny it and justify my behaviour. But I think it's key when we've got people around us who are close and they see us every day. If they see something in us that, you know, we do just have a look at ourselves and check ourselves, and you know what, a lot of it just comes down to honesty, being honest with ourselves. You know, where we're being a little bit off kilter. Have we been a little bit touchy here? Have we been a bit, you know, angry and aggressive in that situation? So, you know, have people around you who you trust and you can speak to, and who'll give you you know, an honest view of how you're behaving.
Yeah, it's that guidance, isn't it? You know, we all need guidance at times. You know, and if it's a couple of words, you know, to help us, you know, improve our day, then that's fantastic. You know, so yeah, great work. Next slide, please. So set a goal for next week. It is important to set goals in life. I'm gonna kind of a little bit of a challenge to everyone here now, and give you a bit of a goal, you know, to try over the next week. And I know Paul's going to come in and give you a goal as well. So there'll be 2 goals set. And the first one, it worked really well for me, and it still does. And it's, for every negative, there's always 2 positives. It's just we tend to find it very difficult to dig out positives. You know, we always swear towards a negative. So the goal that I'd like to set is, you know, for every negative thought over the next week, I want you to try and find 2 positives to override it and work on them 2 positives. And if that's the case, because I still do it, write it down, write the negative down, and then find 2 positives, you know, to override that. So that's one goal. Paul?
Yeah, for me, what's big for me now is I've touched on, you know, catastrophizing situations and sort of focusing on the negative. And, you know, as humans, we tend to focus on the negatives because, you know, we're designed to see danger. So try and turn that round and make a gratitude list every morning. Write down every morning 5 things that you're grateful for in your life. Now, you know, for me, it's family. You know, I've got my health. I've got a roof over my head. You know, I've got food on the table. You know, and I'm in a good place. You know, so those 5 simple things just off the top of my head, which I'm grateful for. Tend to have the same 3 things every morning. You know, family, health, roof over my head, and then those other 2 can tend to change. But you know, everybody's got a lot to be appreciative of. You know, we're all, you know, we're all in a good place, but our perception sometimes is a little bit different.
Yeah, and the key is to set daily and weekly goals that are achievable as well. You know, it's great having a life goal, you know, an end goal, but actually we need goals, you know, what make up the process before we get there. So yeah, great. Next slide, please, Keith. And out of our support, as you can see, you know, there's 3 great out of our supports there. Samaritans, we've got CAM, we've got Hub of Hope. Next slide, please. Back over to you, Keith.
Yep, cheers. I'll jump in here, Ray. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? I should have muted me. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Lee. Thank you, Paul, for your insight into how you've been dealing with stress and coping. As we said, this is just skimming over some of the presentations that we do, because obviously when time scale is involved, and interaction is all about what the offload is about, so we can get some interaction going and face-to-face delivery. So, like I said, for this QR code, get your phone up against it and please fill out the questionnaire. If you can't, if you've not got a phone handy, then the link is in the chat function. And again, that will be most appreciated. And it will also put you in with a chance of winning a signed shirt from the choice of your team. Well, I don't know if it's signed, but we'll try and get it signed if I've said that now. Again, thank you, boys. Thank you for your evening. Thank you for attending and your time tonight. Enjoy the rugby tonight. Enjoy the semi-final, whichever team you support, and I hope that they win. And
come on,
everybody stay safe. Thank you, everybody. Cheers.